What do you think influences a child the most?
Watching everything we are doing. Our voice rises, our body language, the way our eyes roll, volume of our voice, and everything, they get it. They get it right away.
Has there ever been a situation where you had to enforce rules? I mean, I'm sure it happens with everyone,
Yeah.
but some particular example.
My son had picked up some bad language. And I recall now that my response when I heard him use those words was, I actually became very angry. Now, looking back, I think that was a disproportionate response. I was a young and enthusiastic parent, and I thought this is not on. If punishment is violence, that's not okay. I remember once my son had locked me in the house.
Namaste everyone. Welcome to another episode of Parenting Today. And to discuss parenting styles, we have with us Vasudev Ji, who can be nominated for being the coolest dad. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for that.
So, discussing with you is about the parenting styles.
Okay.
Right. Generally, parents do parenting, but don't talk about parenting styles.
Okay.
Right. So, the first question would be, what do you think influences a child the most?
Well, obviously that's a no-brainer in the sense that the parents are definitely going to be there all the time, or probably a substantial amount of time, and we know that they tend to mimic us, they tend to ape us. So everything is being watched. They're watching everything we are doing. The way our voice rises, our body language, the way our eyes roll, the volume of our voice, and everything. They get it. They get it right away. That's how they learn language, for example, right? And the mannerisms and so on. So at that stage, certainly the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, the parental influence is obviously the most critical.
Okay. Has there ever been a situation where you had to enforce rules? I mean, I'm sure it happens with everyone, but some particular example.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. I probably have more than one example. But before I answer that question, I want to say, why do we do that? We have, obviously, sometimes the way we treat our children is oftentimes what we experience as a child. We may think that was the right way to do it. So, for example, disciplinarian parents probably is because of that. Probably their parents were disciplined. They think that's the right way to do it. So, this business of enforcement with the belief that they must behave in a certain way or else. So, there are two extremes. One is we do it for their own safety. We know that certain things they shouldn't do because they will get hurt in the process. The other thing is our shall we say, projection of what I may call power, in the sense, and some of us parents are imperfect. I certainly have been one, in which case we believe that, we have to dominate the child, or, be totally responsible for the way they grew up. Clear the path for them, and there's a misplaced suffocation. Those are two extremes. Most of us are in the middle. We go from place to place. We wander through that. So yes, I have enforced things, certainly for safety at a very young age. And later there have been situations where, for example, my son had picked up some bad language, right? And I recall now that my response when I heard him use those words was, I actually became very angry. Now, looking back, I think that was a disproportionate response. I was a young and enthusiastic parent, and I thought this is not on. So I got angry, not realizing that he was a young child and he had picked it up and he didn't even know what it meant. So my response was disproportionate. So I probably gave him a whack. I obviously feel bad about it. But I think as parents, we all do make these mistakes. We don't really mean to do anything wrong to the child, but it does come out because we're frustrated about many things. It could be our work, our personal lives. So we're very tired, and then the child does something, at a time when you think you shouldn't do it. And then our response is disproportionate to the so-called, level of action. So then you do enforce discipline, or what you think is discipline.
Okay. Do you believe in punishments?
Yes, I do. I think, yes, I do believe in punishment. But again, it depends. There was a very interesting example of what constitutes a punishment. So either you say that the person has done something wrong. There was this case of a very famous flute player. He was talking about his childhood, and where his father was a flautist. And when he stepped out, the guy went and broke all his flutes as a young child, right? And so obviously, he expected his father would enforce discipline. Probably I would have done the same had my son done it. This didn't happen with me, but instead, the father thought of that as an opportunity to get the child interested in the flute and said for the number of flutes that you have broken, which is about 6 or 7, you have to sit and play the flute for the next 6 hours.
Oh,
Which I
that's
thought
an
was very,
interesting
very,
way.
very creative, and actually a nice way of because you see the fear of if punishment is violence, that's not okay. Definitely for very young children, I think it is really wrong in every sense of the word. They just don't know what's going on, and you imagine that through violence you'll be able to change the child's perspective of that. Now it can happen in certain rare cases, and I think it should be the rarest of rare cases when the the child, much later I would imagine, does something which is potentially could be criminal or does something terribly dishonest. I'm still talking, I think corporal punishment has to be the last of the last. Having said that, I also understand that parents sometimes they have multiple jobs. They go in the morning, come back in the evening, they're tired, and therefore the level of patience is very, very low. And therefore to expect them to be always cool under all circumstances and stress is not fair. It doesn't work like that. So then we make those mistakes. So I remember once my son had locked me in the house. Yeah. And I couldn't get out. There was no way I could get out. And I was looking around from the window, and he was just a small boy, 5 or 6 years old, and he was running away with his cycle. And I was yelling at him, and then he looked back, and then he looked back and continued. So that really got me mad. And when he came back, I gave him a whack, which I regret to this day. I really shouldn't have done it. But again, I was tired, I was impatient, I was young. I didn't have a particular, I didn't think through that stuff. So then I forgave myself. I think punishment in the sense that you're using almost implies, could imply violence, or hopefully not, or it could imply certain kind of corrective behavior which is distasteful to the child and makes them not want to repeat it again. And yes, in certain cases you would want to do it. You can't help it. You're human. But to the extent possible, I think the example that I gave you would be a very interesting way of turning a situation into a possible opportunity.
I'm sure. So there would be some parents who would never lose their cool.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, just imagining there would be some. So what do you think would be the possible benefits or drawbacks of being always lenient with kids?
Well, certainly, if the thing is do whatever you wish to. If that's the attitude, it's fine, do anything. If you're an independent person, you do your own thing. It sounds good on paper, actually. It doesn't sound bad. But there are some downsides, and I can tell you one, because, I'm very enthusiastic about music. Let me tell you about music. So the question then is, you want your child to learn music, and you know that music is best learned when they're young, in the sense, there's still things are happening. And also learning music, or for that matter, any art, requires time and patience, right? So if then in that case the child comes along after 2 classes and says, oh, this is boring, I'm just doing the same thing again and again, I want to stop. And then you say, okay, whatever you wish. Now, the problem with that is that the consequence of that is going to hit you about 20 years later.
True.
And in my experience, in young adulthood, and even later, as you get older, the single greatest regret people have is that they didn't follow up on what their parents introduced them to, but they said, no, this is all boring, I don't want to do this, I don't want to go for music class, I don't want to do sports. Then they regret that they didn't have those opportunities. Now, of course, the other side is being too forceful and waking up the kid at 4 o'clock, taking them for class, etc. But again, you have to show them the path. You have to be a bit insistent that they don't give up so easily, because that could also be the thing, that the consequence of that could be you just feel that the slightest amount of not tension but effort, you can just back out and there'll be no consequences. It's quite okay. That could be a behavioral thing that follows. I believe that's possible.
I'm sure this will help.
The other side of it is, as I said, if you persist in following what you want to do, then the consequence is that you can actually become a disciplined person later in life, 20, 30, 40 years. But of course, a child can't be expected to understand that. Yeah.
That's what everybody understands in the later.
Much later, and it's too late for regrets. They've gone, and then they say,
Yes.
"Why didn't you let me do this, etc." So, yeah, I in principle I like the idea of a lenient, respectful, interaction with the child. The child doesn't know so many things, and you impose your adult view on the child, and you think both ways, either too strict or too lenient. So somewhere in the middle is ideal.
I'm sure. Okay, so there has been times now when both the parents are working,
Yeah.
and they would have their own things to attend
Yeah.
to. And I'm sure there would be chances that many of us would be facing that we, in spite of trying hard, at times we do not get involved in our child's stuff.
Yeah.
Is it uninvolved parenting?
Is what? What
Is
the
it uninvolved parenting? Somebody who's just not involved in parenting. Would it be termed that way?
See, there is this term which I think many of us have talked ourselves into, which talks about quality time. They say this oftentimes, saying it doesn't matter. The child can I'm away forever, and I'll come back and spend an hour of quality time. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I myself have been guilty of this, by the way. Actually, what the child craves is your time, plenty of time. So uninvolved parenting, by definition, leads to a child, first feeling lost, perhaps becoming a hard person beyond a point. I think later on the person may have challenges in connecting with people, because they cannot be warm enough. There hasn't been enough warmth and at the right time. So the presence of a parent hovering around, getting involved, being involved. I'm talking about the opposite side. And just sitting around. I have certainly a recollection of me spending endless hours playing Lego with my little boy. Now, I don't think it's quality time plus quantity. I'm always there. No, you may say it's not possible in this modern day and age. I get that. But somewhere we have to step back and see that being uninvolved has consequences in terms of language, behavior, and certain kinds of things that they pick up. That is okay for me not to be particularly bothered about my child. And most of uninvolved parents, as you know, later on they regret. And there's enough evidence that when the children hit 15, 20 or whatever, everybody regrets that they didn't spend enough time.
There's no turning back then.
You can't go back and say, I wish I had done that.
True.
So again, are people deliberately uninvolved? Again, I don't think so. I think they mean well. They believe that they want to give a quality of life, high quality of life to the children. That is the driver. But again, you can't have everything in life. So somewhere you have to figure out you can't have money and status and this, and also somewhere it breaks. So are you prepared to make the sacrifice of your whatever else to spend time with your child and do absolutely nothing, goof off with the child? Because that's what they're going to remember. I think as parents, creating memories is a deliberate act. You want to create memories for them that they remember. So when you're uninvolved, frankly, the memories are of a different kind. He was not there.
Yes.
And then when you ask them when they're 40, 50, who do you remember much? My dad wasn't there much or my mom wasn't there much. They won't give them the benefit of doubt that they were busy with their careers and so on. So I think it's unfortunately, a very deep question. I don't know if I have a great answer for you, because people don't mean to be uninvolved.
True.
It's like that. Even what do you do if your office makes you wake up at 5 o'clock and you have to travel 3 or 4 hours to get to your, what can you do? You're making a living for the family, and that is not possible for a child to understand.
Exactly. So that and has to end.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. What, according to you, is positive parenting?
Okay. I certainly think one is to obviously lead by example quietly, and I think an ability to lower your voice when you're interacting them and not get angry very easily. I think when they hit emotionally by the nature of your eyes, the tone of your voice, these are scars that last for a long time. So positive parenting, I think it's a concatenation of many things that we have talked about earlier. One is really valuing the time spent with the child, and certainly having conversations where you treat that person's views as with respect, great respect. Just because the child cries over something which you deem is irrelevant. For example, you see, the child might cry that my best friend, snatched my khana or my whatever. So you shouldn't laugh at it, because the pain that the child is feeling is true and genuine. You from your adult perspective view that as a very trivial thing, and you cannot trivialize that child's thing. So again, giving total respect to the child as an individual, while recognizing there's an immaturity there, which he will come out. In all respect, of course, when the opinion, for example, is I don't want to do something, either you give up easily, but I think rather than having a conversation, why don't we both go together? Why don't we figure out how to make it happen? I think those kinds of conversations will lead to the child feeling respected, having a good self-image, and be an extrovert. So if we have seen in many, I have my background. I interact with a lot of adults at And many of them, just the other day, in fact, I was in Bangalore, I was doing a leadership workshop. It may seem like nothing to do with parenting, but I'll tell you what happened there. So after that whole business of leadership, what are the styles of leadership, etc., we finished, and one of the participants came to me in the lobby, and he said, I want some counseling because I feel that I'm an introvert. I said, fine, we can talk about it. He said, and then he blurted out, my father was very strict and he didn't allow us to do anything. He didn't allow me to raise my voice, he didn't allow me to wear the kind of shirt I wanted, etc. Now, etc. There was a whole series of complaints. It was blurting out, There's a pain of an adult 40 years old. It lasts. Now, how do you change it around? So I'm saying the positive parent, he was not treated with respect as a young child. The consequences of that was his career was affected, his body language. There was a series of things that happened.
This was a serious example of
it is a very serious example.
Trauma.
It is trauma. Though, he's obviously a very senior engineer in some posh place. But still, the impact is there. And he obviously didn't remember his father or mother, who it was, with a great deal of things. So it's a legacy you leave behind. I can tell you, I don't want to exaggerate, but I would say with my son, we speak daily. And he's a young man with his own career and so on. And I did make a number of mistakes. Luckily, I think I did try to cover up well. And we've had many conversations, especially this teenage stuff, window, where I think we were able to somehow strike a very positive chord. But yet it could have gone the other way, easily gone the other way, because at teens they do everything else to provoke you. Perhaps I was fortunate, maybe I didn't get provoked at those times. Had I done that, the consequence would have been 10 years down the road.
True.
So watching ourselves, it's like, this is me, Vasudev version 1, Vasudev version 2, watching me and saying, don't do this or do this. It's important.
I'm sure nobody would have practiced this.
It's possible. We're all very imperfect, but anyway, you know what I mean.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure this is going to help all the parents.
I hope so.
Many more episodes to go ahead
Okay.
with you.
Thank you so
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
So, if you find this interesting, do like and share this with other parents who may need this.